Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to episode 4. This is a very interesting episode. It's very different, I guess you could say,
It's
in
different, very
terms
different.
of so if any of you guys remember episode 2 about Japanese food, that was my bread and butter. Now, episode 4, this episode will cover Mika's
Yep,
interest. This is his wheelhouse.
this really is.
This is his wheelhouse. So, welcome everyone. Strap in and enjoy, I guess.
Yeah.
As always, my name is Riley.
I'm Mika.
As I said before. um and yeah, so this topic that we're going to cover today is indie games.
Yep.
More specifically, Japanese indie games. Ones
Yep.
in the East. So, as always, what are you looking forward to this week?
There's gonna be news for the Nier remake. I don't know what we're gonna learn, but it's called, we have a fair amount of news, is what they're calling it. So we're gonna learn some stuff about the Nier remake. I really hope we can see some screenshots or something, because for now all we've seen is, concept art. I really just want to see the boys and the girls and the people and the books. Just want to see everyone again. I'm very excited for that. And then really excited in less than 2 months now, the next Kingdom Hearts game is going to release. It's going to be a rhythm game, and I love rhythm games, so I'm very excited about that. I'm also excited to see the fan response, because Kingdom Hearts is not a rhythm game, so we're going to see how the elite gamer boys, the hardcore Kingdom Hearts fans, are going to react to, oh no, now it's a rhythm game. But Kingdom Hearts has always had really good music, so I'm excited. I have high hopes. So yeah, video games is what I'm looking forward to right now.
Yeah, well, this has definitely been an interesting thing in terms of the announcements. They have been very there's definitely been a lot of them. So you'll find that anime and game enthusiasts alike will find that their bellies have been sated. And they're but yet they're hungering for more.
Yeah.
What I'm looking forward to this week, I don't have much going on. Honestly, I'm gonna expand it to when COVID is over. I'm looking forward to us actually getting into a somewhat decent studio.
Yes.
Because for all you who don't know, we are doing this at home, recording
at our
separately.
own homes,
Yes.
But yeah.
This is the
We're doing a Discord call,
This is the trade secrets. This is how the sausage gets made, folks. So yeah. Tell me, let's just dive right into this.
Yeah.
So obviously this is your episode. So tell me, what is your experience and, just a brief overview of your knowledge of, the genre of Japanese indie games.
Yeah. Well, I think before I dive into my experience, I want to try to define what indie games are.
Yeah.
I think most
tell
people
me what
know
an indie game is.
Most people who play video games and are in the general teen to young adult age bracket tend to know what these things are and have probably played quite a few themselves. But just in case for anyone out there who's not really familiar, indie games have to do with video games that are developed by a small team, or basically a small team, one person to a small group of people. I don't think there's a hard number limit, but it's a small group or a very small new studio. In comparison, the other end of the spectrum is what we call AAA games, and those are made by professional studios with hundreds of employees, and they're multi-million-dollar video games in terms of how much the cost is. So indie games are on the opposite side of AAA games. Indie games tend to be low budget, small. Small teams. The games themselves can be quite large and have a lot of content, but indie games usually just have to do with games that are made by one person or a small group. And a lot of these games, some of these games are really popular. Games that you may have heard of, people who are listening, would be games like Five Nights at Freddy's, made by like one guy or a couple guys. Undertale is a big one. Deltarune, same guy who made Undertale. Other popular indie games, Celeste, I think counts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Minecraft used to be an indie game, but you know, now it's owned by Microsoft and stuff, so not really anymore, but back in the days it was made by, like, I don't think that many people.
So,
but, you know, indie games at this point have kind of taken over, I wouldn't, like, the video game pop culture kind of scene, so, you know, it makes sense that we're talking about this now. There's a lot of games that might start out really small, but maybe they get picked up by a publisher, maybe they get ported to, like, the Switch and stuff. The Switch is a great place for indie games, and, like, Steam, another good place for indie games. So, you know, these days, there's a lot of modern traction with, you know, social media and YouTube and stuff. It's easy to find good indie games. There's a lot out there.
So would you say that, would it be fair to say that though few in number of staff, they make up for it with the heart and soul that they put into these games?
Yes. Oh, definitely. The amount of effort, you know, like, to, like, learn programming and, you know, art and music for the people who really do it, like, almost alone. Like, so much respect I have for them, honestly. Like, I mentioned it before, but, like, Five Nights at Freddy's is a big one, because the guy did... Scott Cawthon, the guy who made the games, and, you know, this isn't... I'm not talking about Japanese games yet, I'm mentioning, like, mostly American games, because people tend to know these games. So I won't be talking about these games I'm talking about now later, but just for, you know, example and reference, you know, like, Scott Cawthon, for example, did almost everything for the earlier Five Nights at Freddy's games, for example. So, and those games are quite well loved these days, I would say. Got really popular on YouTube because it's a horror game, the jump scare factor, that kind of thing. But, you know, he was... I do honestly, like, look up to him a little bit because he has, like, responded really well to, like, criticism from fans, and I don't know, he just seems like a pretty cool guy in my opinion. That's what I have to say about that. But he's made, like, 6 games and over the course of, like, 3 years or something like that, and they were quite well loved, so... That's
a very amazing
admirable
accomplishment.
It really is.
One more question before we get into the meat and potatoes of it all. What would you... Because I assume that you have played both the American indie game
I've
genre
played some
as
American,
well,
some Japanese.
as well as, you know, the Japanese variety.
Yes.
Obviously. What would you say is, like, the main, you know, differences of, you know, in terms of, you know, style, in terms of, you know, graphics? What would you say is the main difference?
That is a great question. I would say that there can be a lot of overlap depending on the genre, depending on who made it. Like, I mentioned Undertale before. Undertale has a lot of influence from Mother Earthbound, I think. And, like, a lot of anime references. Like, there's a whole there's an entire character who's basically an otaku, and you can, you know, have, like, it's a date in the game, and at one point one character asks, is anime real? And you can tell her anime is real. And that's one of my favorite moments in Undertale, is you can tell a character that anime is real.
I don't know. Is anime real? Is it not?
I told her yes. I told the fish lady that anime is real when I played Undertale. I played Undertale recently. I think you should point that out. But, you know, American games, depending, can a lot of times take a lot of inspiration from not necessarily Japanese indie games, but, like, Japanese games that maybe they grew up playing, like Final Fantasy, or, like, Earthbound. The Earthbound Mother series is pretty popular. I don't know much about Earthbound or Mother, so apologies. But, and I would also say, like, in the horror genre, I would say it's a lot more... Like, obviously it depends on the game, because there are games that totally subvert this, but I feel like it's more gory, in your face. I think that, you know, I don't want to delve too deeply into, like, cultural differences, because that's, like, a whole nother episode in itself, but... Right. Japanese culture tends to focus more on, this is something I learned in my, oh my god, it's like my culture... Oh my god, that's totally... But it's a class I took in college about, whatchamacallit, communication between having to do with different cultures. The words have left my brain, but basically, like, Japanese culture is a lot more about the group, and people tend to be a little more reserved and quieter. And American
Yes.
culture tends to be more singular, individualistic, and,
And abrasive.
louder, aggressive. Yeah, aggressive is a great word. And, obviously not every person from these cultures is like that, but that tends to be kind of like, that's a societal expectations and more like the average than, like, single people being on different ends of the spectrum for these kind of things. And that's kind of what I would say is the difference Japanese horror games tend to be. I feel like they're a little more subtle. There's still gore, there's still those kind of things. I feel like they have less jump scares. Like, once again, I'm comparing, like, American Five Nights at Freddy's, which is very aggressive, very jump scary, gory, to, like, the RPG Maker, pixel art, Japanese horror games that I know. But obviously there are horror games that are not indie, like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and those are pretty big and gory and decently aggressive, but those are Japanese games. But they're not indie, so, a little bit of a, it doesn't matter too much at that point, but I would say the main difference is probably, like, cultural differences, and a lot of American games will take inspiration from Japanese games. That's not to say that Japanese games don't take inspiration or make references to, like, American or other cultural media, but I would say I see it a lot more in American games than in Japanese games.
Well, that has been a very meaty response.
Thank you.
Definitely. So speaking of meat, let's jump right into it, shall we?
Yeah.
I'll just speak on my experiences real quickly. My experiences are fair and few compared to Mika. As one of the people of the culture, I didn't really get into that kind of genre. But I can definitely vouch for the, I guess, the cultural differences. Whereas, America tends to be a bit in your face, loud and abrasive. Japanese is more polite. It's definitely a subtler quality. I have only played a few, like, say, American indie games. So, like, the usual, Deltarune, Undertale.
Right, yeah, those are the big ones. Yeah, there are so many games these days.
I played a bit of Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh yeah, Doki Doki. How did I forget Doki Doki? Like, now I'm just thinking Doki Doki is a huge one. That obviously takes a lot of inspirations from Japan. So another point for the, inspiration right there, right?
The inspiration of the Japanese Ultimate games.
Yeah, Ultimate games. Love Ultimate games. We'll touch on those a teeny bit in this episode.
So what do you have on the agenda for us today?
Yeah, well,
sink our teeth into.
Yeah, I will bringeth the information and the info dump. But basically, I'm gonna give, like, a quick disclaimer for all the games we're gonna talk about today. A lot of these games, most of these games, in terms of, like, rating and content-wise, like, they tend to skew in the, like, the T to M, teen to mature age rating. So some of these games, especially the horror games, are a little bit heavy in terms of, like, triggering content. So, especially for the horror games, I would highly suggest, if there's any games that sound interesting to you and you're interested in playing, or maybe watching a Let's Play of them or something, I would recommend looking up some trigger warnings. A lot of times on, like, the site where you can get them, there will be a list of, like, what kind of content you can expect, or, like, tags or something like that. So I will mention a couple, like, important ones that tend to have really triggering content, but it is a general, like, most of these games may have something that can be a little, concerning or triggering. So this is the blanket disclaimer. We're not going to discuss any, like, explicitly triggering content. We're just going to kind of give summaries and, like, why I like the games and stuff. Yeah, and there's not going to be any, like, there shouldn't be any spoilers. I'm just going to talk about the basic premise of a lot of these games and stuff. So with that said,
view at your own risk.
Look at these at your own risk and know that, some of these games are really heavy, and just to be safe and careful when looking into them, because lots of great games here. But always,
be responsible
put your own
beings.
Safety first, right?
Yes, be responsible. Look at, research.
Yeah, do some research of your own.
Don't be blind.
Right.
Don't go blindly in there.
We're gonna cover like two subgenres, I guess. Like, so first I'm gonna talk about horror games, because I talked a decent bit about horror games before, and then I'm gonna talk about a couple games that kind of fall outside of the horror genre and are just a little more miscellaneous. Like, we're gonna talk about a couple otome games and some other games that are more like adventure oriented and stuff. So yeah, that's just what to keep out. So I'm gonna tackle horror first.
So would you say that in terms of indie games, Japanese, the genres of these games kind of fall all over the spectrum?
Yes, very much so. There's, same with American indie games, right? You have you have your Doki Dokis, you have Five Nights at Freddy, which are, both horror games but different kinds, and you have like, Coffee Talk, which is not actually American.
Coffee Talk.
I think it's Malaysian, but it's in English. If I'm remembering correctly. Coffee Talk's very good. Coffee Talk, but it's not a Japanese game, so I can't talk about that one too much. Untitled Goose Game. I played Donut County recently, and those are all very different
Untitled
genres.
Goose Game?
What, Untitled Goose Game? Yeah. I love Untitled Goose Game.
So, looking at the list, you have
a lot.
There's really the one that pops into my head is Higurashi no Nakokoro ni.
Is that because I wrote it in all caps?
Yes, it's because you wrote it in all caps.
Oh, I did write a couple more in all caps, but Higurashi is the first game on this list that we can both see. So yeah, the game is Higurashi no Nakokoro ni, and in English it's usually called Higurashi When They Cry, or When the Cicadas Cry.
Yes.
So Higurashi, as I'm going to be
calling it.
It's already
sounding so sad.
But yeah, Higurashi is it has a lot. I feel like it has like every genre attached to it. It's not exactly a visual novel. I believe it's been called a sound novel before. So if you're familiar with visual novels, they're basically like text-based games, and they it's a game about reading basically, and usually there's there's pictures to go, so there's backgrounds, there's drawings of the characters. If you just Google visual novel, if you're not familiar, you'll probably find some screenshots to get an idea of what the format looks like. But so Higurashi is a little different. It's been called a sound novel and like a kinetic novel before, because normally in visual novels you have a lot of art and that kind of thing. So like for special scenes, there might be like special drawings. Those are usually called CGs. So, you don't see many of those in Higurashi, and then in visual novels, usually there's like a multiple choice, but Higurashi is a kinetic novel, and there's no choices, it's just a straight ride, down to the end. It's, it's like reading a book, basically, unless you read like a choose-your-own adventure book. It's like Higurashi is like reading a normal book that's not choose-your-own adventure, basically.
That's why it's called a visual novel.
That's why it's called a visual novel. So yeah, Higurashi has had a lot of names put on it, because it's, the main thing it is a horror game, but Higurashi doesn't really have jump scares, and it builds up a lot. It builds up a lot of its horror through atmosphere and music and very good writing. Can I just say, I really love the writing in Higurashi. The English translation group who did the translation did a really good job of conveying what I imagine is the original feelings of the Japanese. So very, very good stuff. I got into Higurashi very recently in June or so. June of this year, I basically realized, hey, they have the first chapter of Higurashi is free for the foreseeable future, because right now there's kind of a deal with the first installment of Higurashi is going to be free until there is a vaccine for COVID-19. So the foreseeable future. So that is really great, because that makes Higurashi very accessible. This is only for Steam. This isn't for other releases. But Steam is the only English release anyways that I
And
know
this
of.
is definitely really good timing because... Do you want to announce it or should I?
Yeah, I'll say it. So
Okay, go for it.
Higurashi, we won't touch on this too much because this is not the game, but Higurashi had, a long time ago, like 2007, I think, an anime adaptation. But Higurashi's gonna have a new one, kind of like how Fruits Basket has had one recently, and like Full Metal Alchemist had Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. They're basically they're calling it like Higurashi New or something like that. So I'm very excited, definitely, for that, because I have not seen the original Higurashi, just because it's not very accessible to watch, and there's like one anime streaming service I saw ahead, but I'm like, I don't have an account with that, blah, blah, blah.
It's really, really funny because I have seen it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Obviously, I don't come into it with a visual novel, knowing that there was a visual novel.
Well, this was years ago, right?
I thought that it was just an anime that was there.
I think most people think that.
And so it was definitely interesting. Obviously, it was limited by the art style of the of the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But from an anime perspective, I'm definitely interested, and I will most likely watch the remake, even though horror and that kind of genre isn't really my cup of tea. So
I think that speaks a decent amount about how good Higurashi is.
Yes.
But yeah, I've heard conflicting things when it comes to the anime. Like, some people have said it's a really good adaptation, some people have said it's really bad. I do have to ask, though, if you've seen the second season, or if you just watched the first season, if you remember. Or did you not know there were 2 seasons?
I don't even remember if I've seen the second season.
Yeah,
I'm a little embarrassed to say. I don't remember if there was a second season. Well, no. Obviously, you're asking me about it, but I didn't know that there was. And maybe I watched it without knowing, but like...
Mm-hmm. Well,
can't really comment
if you
on
don't
that.
remember, that's okay. But there's kind of a common sentiment that a lot of people watched the first season and not the second, or like didn't know there was a second season, and as a result missed out on a lot of the information. So yeah, I've heard that the second season wraps up the anime really well, and so it's a shame that a lot of people have.
I would definitely say that the first couple episodes I was very confused on how on the direction and how things were kind of playing out. It definitely took a few brain cells in the old noggin to figure things out, connect the dots. So, but I guess that's that is what the allure is to it, I should say.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Higurashi is a horror game, but it's also kind of like a murder mystery kind of.
Yes.
So, I haven't mentioned really like what is the summary of Higurashi exactly. So, Higurashi is the main character is Maebara Keiichi. I'm going to use the Japanese name order, so last name, first name. So Keiichi has lived in Hinamizawa, which is this small Japanese, very small rural Japanese village for some time. He's kind of the transfer student. He's, getting used to Hinamizawa life, basically. And he, the game starts kind of just hanging out with your friends. Oh, I should mention this game takes place in 1983. So, obviously there's a lot of different rural Japan in 1983. So, there are going to be some things that aren't there, right? There were no phones back then. TV was
I wasn't
still
alive in 1983,
newish.
so I cannot... So I cannot confirm. I cannot confirm nor deny.
Not quite, but yeah, so this game takes place, quite some time ago. But, so the game starts out kind of slice of life-ish. Keiichi has his friends, Ryugu Rena, Sonozaki Mion, Hojo Satoko, and Furure Rika. And so he has his 4 friends, and they all have different... Because they live in such a rural town, there's like one school, and so the classroom has a really wide range of like grades. So the youngest students, Satoko and Rika, are probably like 10 to 12, maybe. And Rena and Mion are like 15, 16-ish, and Keiichi's like 15 or 16-ish, it seems. right? So they have kind of a wide age range, but they're still very close friends and they get along really well. And so you start out with just kind of the slice of life kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it starts devolving.
Stuff.
It starts devolving from there, basically. It starts out, this kind of fun, happy school life. Keiichi gets along with his friends. You get to see their antics. You get to see their after-school club where they play games. And whoever loses has to take a punishment. And it's, really wacky, crazy stuff. And they get in trouble for it and this kind of stuff. And it kind of starts devolving from there. Keiichi and Rena go... So I have to explain that Rena is kind of, she's very obsessed with cute things, but her definition of cute is kind of skewed. It's just whatever she thinks is cute. It's not what normal people might necessarily think are cute. So she likes to raid the garbage dump for cute things.
That's
things
valid.
that people have thrown away. We do stand a garbage queen. But
We do stand a garbage queen.
And,
is that her unofficial title?
I don't know. I just made that up right now. But
Make
I would
it a
say
thing.
she's kind of a garbage queen. I love her. Rena's like my favorite character in Higurashi. TBH.
Make it a thing.
But needless to say, you go to hang out with Rena basically and help her look for cute stuff. And you meet this guy, and he tells you basically that there's been this curse. There's been this thing that's been happening for the past few years around the Watanagashi festival, which is like their summer festival. And they call it, which Watanagashi means cotton drifting. So they have a festival at the end of summer or something like that. And it's to, honor, it has something to do with cotton and, thinking.
Sorry,
like, your futon and your cotton drifting. And they put cotton in the river.
Yes, when I think of cotton drifting, I think of cars made out of cotton and they're drifting on the streets.
That's funny. That's really funny, Riley.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That was great. But, yeah, basically, so, Keiichi is a little concerned because basically what this guy tells him is for the past 4 years, 2 people have died. Well, one person disappears and one person dies after Watanagashi, during that night. And so it's almost Watanagashi, basically. So Keiichi's like, oh crap, the curse is going to happen again. And this is where things start really devolving because Keiichi is like, why didn't my friends tell me this? What the heck's happening? He starts distrusting them, and I'm not going to mention any more than that because where I'm talking now, it's about halfway through the first chapter of Higurashi. And so these are very minor spoilers. Higurashi is like an 80 to 100 hour game, depending on your reading speed. But that's about halfway through. That's your first... that's your first, that's your mini summary of Higurashi, basically, so far. And it just kind of devolves from there. And like I said, it's a murder mystery, so Keiichi and his friends are very invested in, okay, why are people dying? How is it happening? Is it, what's behind this? Can we stop it? It's, obviously the scale is a lot more grand than what I'm talking about, but I can't really... Right, spoilers, right? I don't want to give away too much. But, if this sounds vaguely interesting to you, I would highly recommend looking into it. Like I said before, the first chapter, Onikakushi, is free right now on Steam. And I believe that's the only place you can get it in English. There are, a million different ports on consoles and stuff, but they're all in Japanese. There's a PS2 game, there's a DS game, there's a 3DS game, there's a Switch version, there's a PS4 version, every console you can think of has a Japanese Higurashi port. Higurashi is really big in Japan.
So if you can't read Japanese...
you're gonna have to get it on Steam, unfortunately. But
or what you could do is have, get it on, a console or something, and then have, invite your, your friendly Japanese neighbor over, because everyone has one of those.
I don't know about that.
If you don't have one, then you probably are the one.
This is like a gay cousin kind of deal.
You'll invite them over, and you have them sit through with you through the entire... You're going to have them
dictate and translate an 80 to 100 hour game.
And, extra points if they, if they have different, different accents or
If they can
different
do the voices, if they can
or different
scream
voices. Yeah, yeah. If
can they
can
scream?
talk.
There's a lot of screaming. I'm not joking. There's a lot of screaming in
If
Higurashi.
not, I do recommend grabbing a secondary or a tertiary
Right.
Japanese friend and just having them all.
I do not condone this behavior. But yeah, like I said, Higurashi is quite a long game, so. But the good thing is that it is available on Steam, and getting all of the games right now will put you down like $50 maybe, but you can get them on sale. They go on sale pretty decently. Like, I got all of my copies of Higurashi. I say copies, but it's just there's 8 entries. The game's broken up into 8 parts on Steam, so, but yeah, so, at least try out the first chapter. It's kind of long, though. It's like 10 hours, so if you are not a reading person, I would suggest the anime. There's also a manga. I do not know about the manga very much, but I would highly suggest at least trying the first chapter, try to read it. There's a lot, just because it's free, and like I said, Higurashi is one of those things that it's a very long game, so it has a lot to say. There's a lot of things that it covers, and some of these things are very heavy and dark, so Higurashi is one of those things that I'm putting the asterisk on and saying, please, for the love of God, look up some trigger warnings, because Higurashi, covers every avenue, honestly. So,
interesting.
Be very careful.
It's a game, it's an anime, it's a manga. It encompasses the Holy Trinity.
It has everything. I mean, it has, whatchamacallit. Oh, no, I forgot the name of the game. Oh, Mahjong. It has a Mahjong game, because some of the characters play Mahjong, and there's, a Mahjong game, but, it's only in Japanese, because of course, but Higurashi is very popular in Japan, needless to say.
Yes, so, I have played, and I know how to play Mahjong, and I'm pretty good at winning, not gonna lie.
Maybe I should buy the Higurashi Mahjong game, and then you can teach me how to win.
Yeah.
Just gotta go to eBay and find it, or whatever.
So, I think we've pretty much exhausted this topic. Unless there's some other things that you want to say about it.
I mean, I guess just quick notes. It's just Higurashi covered a lot of really in-depth and deep, heavy topics, and I feel like it does a really good job with it. The music is fantastic. The ports for Steam and the consoles have updated art. Oh, I do want to mention there's a patch for the Steam versions. It's called 7th mod, 07th mod. I would look it up because it takes all of the art that was put on the console releases and it puts it in the Steam release.
Ooh.
And you can also patch in some of the extra content that's only on the console releases and not in English. And I think that content is being translated right now. So 7th mod is really cool. I like it. This is me endorsing them because I like their content.
Special content.
Because I get to read the, exclusive console arcs, as they're called, which are only available, on the Switch and PS4 and stuff. So it's, awesome, I get to read this for free. It's very cool, so, yeah, love Higurashi. Highly recommend.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so before we jump into the next topic, I just have, I'm just gonna sprinkle in some questions here and there.
Go ahead.
So my next question for you is, what is the appeal that you see, of the Japanese indie genre? More specifically, what's the hype that the small cult following around the world, that has amassed, why is it as, popular with, as it is?
I would say part of it is just people tend to like Japanese games. That's just a recurring thing. It's people like JRPGs, for example, right? Japan is just a culture, I think, that has a lot of video games, rhythm games, right? That's a very Japanese thing. Although I'm not saying rhythm games originated in Japan, but when you think of things like rhythm games, for example, I tend to think of Japan at least. So I would say that there are a lot of different genres that are very heavily associated with Japan, if not developed and Japanese made. But I'd also say that, sometimes because of cultural values, the ideas explored are different. And I would also say it helps a lot that a lot of these games are free or very cheap. So, and I'm not saying that there aren't free or cheap American indie games, because there are. Deltarune's free, for example, and like the entirety of like Five Nights at Freddy's is very cheap, for example. And a lot of games go on sale a lot, but I think thanks to the internet and like the general fascination with Japanese culture and things from Japanese products, I think that in tandem with like the ease of sharing games online, and just because they tend to be free a lot of the time, they get picked up by like one person who translates the game, and then now suddenly everyone can play it in English, for example.
Yeah.
So because of the internet is part of it, because of Japanese cultural values that sometimes delve into different topics, because of like just like art styles, like a lot of the games have like an anime art style because that's just how it is. People like anime,
Definitely.
right? So I would just say like culture, and also because of internet and cheap and free things.
Well, I can speak on behalf of my people when I say, I'm very flattered.
I'm sure you are. This whole
And,
episode is just flattery.
thank you. Thank you to, all the people around the world who has, been so, I guess, enamored by
Yeah.
our way of life
Yeah.
and by, the things that we do. So, the products that we make. So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many people who are very, very in love with Japan. Definitely. I'm one of them. But since, we're talking about Japanese games, let's talk about some more, right?
Let's do it.
So
What's our next topic on
I'm
the-
going to talk about like a subgenre now. So,
Okay.
Right, horror is a subgenre. The subgenre is like RPG Maker horror. So,
okay.
For people who don't know, RPG Maker is a game engine that is, I would say, decently well known for being pretty easy to use, and its name is RPG Maker. It's made for making RPG games. So that's what it's supposed to be for. So
knew?
making games that are like Dragon Quest, like older Dragon Quest games, I think is kind of what you could think of it looking like. I'm not very familiar with Dragon Quest, but I would say that that's kind of the aesthetic that RPG Maker games tend to have, because it's pixel art, but RPG Maker games are not always RPG. So, like I said, these are RPG Maker, like, horror games. Not all of them are RPG Maker, but they're kind of in that genre where they use that kind of engine. So, like I said, RPG Maker is RPG, but people have made horror games out of them just because the engine's easy enough. Like, I have RPG Maker MV, which is a new-ish version. I think at this point it's a little old, and so I've fiddled with it, and I can say RPG Maker is not super hard to learn. It definitely takes, as any game development does, but, I would say that the learning curve is not that bad. So I think that's part of it, is just it's easy to use and not too expensive, especially if you get it on sale or something. But, so I'm going to talk about games that were made in RPG Maker or a similar engine, basically, in their horror games. So the first game I'm going to talk about is Ib, or Ib, depending on how you pronounce it. But Ib is a game, and I'm not 100% sure if it was made in RPG Maker. I'm, like, decently sure, but I don't know. So Ib is a horror game. You play as a young girl named Ib. Shock. A lot of these games also feature, like, a young female protagonist. I guess I should point that out. But you play as Ib, who's, like, 9, I think. And basically the premise of the story is you go to an art gallery one day with your parents, and you wander off, and you basically go into this alternate world where all the paintings are, like, alive and monsters and stuff. So, it's a horror game, right? Not exactly following the rules of logic, but you go into the spooky painting world, and there's spooky paintings and art statues and stuff, and, they've come to life, and they're trying to kill you, basically. And so, it's, it's a horror game.
Yeah.
But, so you play as Ib, and she is a pretty quiet kid, but, the enjoyment factor of the game, I would say, is, like, I always say this first, but, like, the music and the story, although the main character is pretty quiet, the supporting characters are pretty interesting. So you have Gary, who's, like, who also gets trapped in this painting world. I don't know if that's what it's called, but I'm calling it that. But Gary gets trapped, and you meet him, and you basically, like, save his life, and he is, like, this nice guy who's very sweet, and he acts like a protective older brother kind of figure to Ebe, I feel like. But, you know, the twist is, like, he's an adult, but, he's kind of, I wouldn't say anxious, like, he's easily scared, and Ebe, who's, like, this small child, is, like, pretty decently unfazed by things. Like,
duality.
So, you know, you have kind of this contrast of personalities that I think works pretty well. And then you have Mary, who's Ebe's age-ish. I don't think it's ever given, but... And then you have Mary, who is someone else who's you encounter amongst this world, and she is this very, like, cheerful, childish, borderline obnoxious, depending on how you think of her, I think, kind of character. She's very cheery, and she wants to hang out with Eve and Gary, and she gets, I would say, jealous easily. But she is another character, and, you know, the game basically, you know, you have these three characters kind of interacting with each other, and going through the gallery, you know, just trying to get out and not die. And the game has multiple endings, so, like, the opposite of Higurashi. Right, Higurashi is kinetic, there's no choices. Ebe has choices, and also, depending on some of the actions you take, like if you choose to go somewhere or not do certain actions, or something like that, you can get a different ending, and Ebe has, like, several endings. So, yeah, there are good endings, there are bad endings, there are it's up to you kind of endings. I won't spoil them, but I think Ebe has a decent amount of replay value if you want to go back and get a different ending, a better ending, or worse ending, you know. Like I said, the music's good, the story's interesting, you know, right? Like, who are these painting creatures? Why are you here? I guess I didn't mention, but the art gallery is all for this guy named, like, Guertena, I think. So it's all this one guy's work, and, you know, so you can theorize a little bit, like, what do these paintings mean? What was this guy's life like? You know, that kind of stuff, too. But Ebe is just one of those games that, like, I have enjoyed for many years as a young teen. You know, like, Ebe falls into the category of, like, it's free, so it's very easy to access. So, you know, it's free. Like, I downloaded it, you know, one day, and I'm like, oh man, this game is fun. But yeah, that's part of why I like Eve too. It's, like, game free, game very fun.
Yeah, that seems like that's a very interesting
honestly,
game.
It is a really interesting game. I like it a lot. It is, right, if it wasn't for Higurashi, Ebe would be my, like, number one recommendation. But Higurashi is just kind of what's on my mind these days, so it had to be first.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, you know, moving along, let's talk about the next topic.
Some more games. Yeah. I will do a quick, like, notes about Ebe. Like I said, it's a free game. And I just want to say, like, I love Ebe a lot, and some of the other games have gotten, like, remakes and stuff, and, like, Ebe has gotten nothing, and, like, I don't know if just the person who made the game is not interested or inactive or something, but, like, please, for the love of God, I would pay so much money for, like, an Ebe remake or, like, a port, a Steam version, a Switch port, anything. I would drop so much money. Just want to put that out there. People,
you will single-handedly fund this.
I would happily pay $20 or more for, like, a Switch port of Ebe. Please, God. But anyways, speaking of games, the next RPG Maker adjacent horror game we're talking about is Mad Father, which is not an RPG Maker game. The engine is actually Wolf, and I'm not familiar with Wolf at all, so... But yeah, it's another game-making engine, and that's about all I know about Wolf. But, Mad Father is another horror game, and once again, you are a little girl. Wow. But this time, you are Aya Drevis, who is a little girl who lives with her father, and her mother passed away some time ago. And basically, the aim of the game is to help your father, who is a mad scientist, basically, and save him because you are concerned about him because he is a mad scientist and all of his creations are trying to kill you and him and just, like, coming to life. Yeah, you want to keep him safe. Everything is coming to life. Basically, like, there's a curse, I guess I should mention that. Like, there's a curse kind of deal happening. And, you know, you are trying to save your father, basically. but also your father is a mad father. So get some stuff happening. But yeah, not Eba. Mad Father is another horror. I just got E-Brain, man. Mad Father
E-Brain
is another horror game. Like I said, it's quite interesting, right? You learn a lot about the characters, who they are, and, like, why is your father like this? And, like, why are the experiments coming to life? And, like, what is the true story of stuff? And, who's Aya? Stuff like that. Once again, the music, the graphics, pretty, it's a pixel art game, but it's really quite nice, and I'm quite glad I mentioned Mad Father in this, because there's a remake coming out, like, during Halloween season. It was announced, like, yesterday, which is very exciting.
Oh,
so,
interesting.
Mad Father has already been, like, remade-ish. It was ported to Steam. Like, it used to be a free game, and then it got a Steam version, and that was already, like, they redid the graphics and changed some things, but now there's a new game. A new Mad Father, like, remake. And the graphics are being, like, completely overhauled. And there seems to be new content, and it's going to be on Steam and the Switch, so that's all I know for now. But I'm very excited, because I'm a Mad Father fan, so I really hope it's quite good and gives good content and stuff. And that's the deal on Mad Father.
That's the dealio on that.
Right, alright. So, the next game I'm going to talk about is Misao, who is, the game's made by the same people who made Mad Father. Misao came first, actually, but, I like Mad Father more, sorry. But, putting a quick asterisk on Misao, because this one has quite dark content. Just putting it out there, so that people know. This one and Higurashi are, like, the two really, dark games, so keep an eye out for Misao, be careful for that one. But yeah, Misao is another Wolf editor game, same game engine as Mad Father, same people, yada yada. And the story here is that you, once again, are a young girl, but this time you're a high schooler, so we've gotten a little older, we're a little more mature now. You are a high school age girl, and basically, you've been wondering where your friend Misao has been. Basically, she disappeared a couple months ago, and you're like, the main character's name is Aki, and you can play as a girl or a boy. Aki's basically like, I haven't seen Misao for a couple months. Sure is strange. I kind of wanted to be, like, friends with her. But I
now
never really
you're
got
going,
the chance.
after a couple months, now you're deciding, hey, I'm gonna go after
She was probably definitely thinking that for a while, but, like, Misao's been gone for a while, and so you go to school, right, like you do, and, turns out, school's cursed. Misao has cursed the school. So, basically, Misao is, like, Aki starts hearing, like, Misao calling out to her, and is saying, like, find me, come help me, basically. And so the aim of the game is to, like, find Misao, appease her spirit, find out, like, why she died, what happened, and, find out more about, like, the people in your class and stuff, because they are tied to Misao. I won't say how, obviously, but learning it. But, basically the aim of the game is Misao is haunting the school. Why is she haunting the school? What can we do about it? That kind of thing. So, yeah, Misao is a horror game, like I said, so there's a lot of deaths. This one kind of falls almost into the slapsticky, like, end of horror. Like, it still gets really dark, but it also has some, like, sometimes if you interact with certain items, like, you just get killed. Like, you read a certain book or walk to a certain room or something, like, you're dead. Why did you go there? You went to the death spot.
That reminds me of, like, some of the absurdity, like, I guess you could say in, like, Nier Automata.
Oh,
Nier
yeah,
Automata.
that's a good parallel.
Like, there's multiple endings where, like, and some of them are, like, really, really, like, just joke endings where you, like,
right.
Either one, like, one, you eat a mackerel and you die.
Mm-hmm.
Mackerel ending. Or, you self-destruct the space station that you're on and then you die.
Yeah, basically it's kind of like that. There is actually, Misao has a Steam version, and in the Steam version, you can collect all the deaths, basically. So, kind of similar. Yeah, you can, like, find every way to die in the game. So, like I said, it kind of gets into that slapsticky zone, but Misao gets very dark.
It's like Pokemon.
Yeah, it is like Pokemon. Collect all the deaths. exactly. But, yeah, Misao has multiple, like 2 endings, actually. Mad Father also has a couple endings. I didn't mention that. It has, like, 3, I think. But Misao and Mad Father have multiple endings, same people, yada yada. But, yeah, Misao is an interesting game. Explores some dark topics, like I said, so be careful, but it has a lot of funny moments. I'd say it's a lot more humor-y than Mad Father. So if you like funny stuff, maybe Misao is more your cup of tea than Mad Father, which is just like
joke.
scary shit all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so is that all you want to talk about in terms of the horror genre?
That, basically, yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna make our segue now to the not horror, where I'm gonna kind of rapid fire off games that I think are cool that are not horror.
So we're getting onto the it looks like the not horror side.
That's right. I've wrote not horror in the outline, so you know it's not
Yeah.
horror. So we're making our segue away from horror. As always, just be careful of trigger warnings. Just because these games are scary doesn't mean they don't go into, dark territory.
Definitely.
But another, yeah.
Before we delve into that, just one more question.
Sure, fire.
What is or how has like the Japanese indie games shape your life, like personally, if at all, if they have at all,
Yes, the answer is yes, a lot. I mean, part of it is just like I think about these games a lot. They live rent free in my head, but I mean, on a personal level, like a lot of these games do have like really. Some of them have very heartwarming messages, or just like the game was good and I think about it for years. And like some of the games, especially like LiEat, Mad Father, Misao, like I play those games every couple years. Like I'm not joking when I say I've played those games like 3 times each at least. And the same goes for Higurashi. I mean, I only just got into it, so like 2 years from now I'm probably gonna read it all again. So part of that is just like, I keep coming back to them. And then also I would say that part of it is thanks to things like YouTube. That's how I really like got into these kind of things, because like I said, they're very easily accessible because a lot of them are free or very cheap. So, because of things like YouTube, you can watch a Let's Play or something, and then it's like, oh, the game's free. I can play it myself. And then that's how you get into them, basically. But because of that, I got into them when I was like 13, 14, depending on the game. So they very much affected me, like, just like because I was a teen and, easily affected and stuff.
Yeah, so about that, have they at all shaped your, I guess, your view of the world to like, to an extent?
I would say that not necessarily, because a lot of these games, Higurashi, yeah, somewhat, but the others, and we've talked about before, a lot of them, some of them kind of like reinforce my existing beliefs, I would say, but because these are kind of like goofy horror games about little girls, like they're not, other than Higurashi and Ib to an extent, I wouldn't necessarily say they've like changed my worldview, but like Ib, for example, I do think about a lot just because, like I said before, Gary is kind of this kind of meek, easily scared character, compared to the young girl who is less phased by things. She still gets scared, but who's less phased by like the spooky paintings and stuff, and like, oh, we could die. She's less phased by that, and just kind of this like, Gary is a very positive role model, I would say, to Eve, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be like a masculine, manly man. Like there's a point in the game where you're hiding in a room from the spooky painting ghosts, and they're not ghosts, but the spooky paintings, and you can ask Gary, like, why do you talk like a lady? And in Japanese, he talks very femininely, and that doesn't... And, because English doesn't really have that, it doesn't get conveyed
He uses
perfectly.
a lot of...
He's very feminine.
The feminine language, like...
He uses the thingies. You know what I'm talking about, the Japanese language feminine thing. He talks very femininely, and you can ask him about that, and I just think that Gary is a very, I don't know, I just think it's nice that we have him, and, like, it's mostly not played as a joke, that he is kind of this feminine guy, like, he doesn't really care, and he's just cool, and I like him a lot. Gary is cool. And then Higurashi, I would say, I can't talk about too much because it delves into spoiler territory, but there are definitely a couple times where, like, I'm surprised I didn't cry more reading Higurashi, but there were a couple times where, like, teared up a little bit, and that's, like, to put it very vaguely, like, times where characters have admitted they need help or been very open about something that happened to them. And there's just a lot of really heartwarming and wonderful messages in Higurashi, like, family doesn't have to be blood. It can be a bunch of teenagers in a rural Japanese village that like to play pranks on each other. But, family is more than blood, I would say, is like a really big message in Higurashi. So I would say that is something. And just like the level of things that it talks about, it is a lot more progressive than you think it might be. Talks a lot about topics that you're like, whoa, we're talking about this now, alright. So, yeah, Higurashi is cool and I like it, and I felt good reading it, I guess. But I would say that these games kind of influenced my tastes, honestly. Like, they either reinforce my beliefs or...
whole episode of mostly Higurashi.
It really is, and I knew this would happen. I knew it, but yeah, I'm gonna rapid fire now through the not horror section.
Yes, rapid fire.
Because we're getting to our time. I didn't realize I'd talk about Higurashi this much, but oops, it'd be like that. But
hey, I mean, if this does become if there is a considerable amount of, I guess, more content that you want to, express yourself in, we could definitely line up for a second episode.
We'll see. But, yeah.
Possible.
Okay, but not horror games. So, one of the first ones I mentioned is One Bit Heart, which is called, like, a friend-making game. Basically, you are a NEET, someone who... You're a shut-in, basically. He plays a middle school dropout who was bullied, basically, and he is a shut-in, but then this girl appears, and she's like, you are going to make some friends. Yeah, that is literally the that's how the game is set up. Is this girl suddenly appears one day, and she's like, hey, loser, get in the car, we're making friends. Basically. No, there's no car, but... so it's... Yeah, that's basically what happens. And, the main character, his name is Nanashi, if I'm remembering correctly, he doesn't have very good social ability. He's not good at talking with people, so this girl who comes up to him basically says, you are going to make friends now. I'm going to teach you how to make friends with people.
Does he wear glasses?
Yeah, and so, basically it starts out like that, and then it turns out there's kind of this, they live in sort of this futuristic society where everyone has, like brain chip phones implanted. So they have, like, these funny, like, headphone accessory things, and they're basically, like, brain chip kind of things. And they can communicate, like, their smartphones are funny headphones, and I love it.
Are they stylish?
The art is really good. The art is top-notch in this game. Like, I didn't mention, but, the art and, like, I think basically everything other than, like, the music was made by...
Sign me up for a brain chip phone.
But the art and the story was made by Miwa Shiba, who is, like, an illustrator and has done, like, a lot of illustrations for videos and, like, the Vocaloid community and stuff, so...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to play the games initially, because I like Miwa Shiba's art a lot. So it's very stylish, but, it's... Because they live in this kind of tech society, like, there's kind of this, there's, like, a group of hackers running around, basically, and they're like, oh, crap, there's hackers. We should, like, look into that a little bit. So they're kind of like, who are the hackers? How do we stop them? But the game is mostly about, like, talking to people, unraveling some mysteries a little bit, etc. And, yeah, making friends. It's basically a friend-making game, but it's pretty cute. I like it a lot. The music's good, and it's in the group of games that I replay every couple of years because it's quite good.
I can see the potential for it becoming, like, philosophical in a way.
Yeah, it has a little bit of that, but mostly it's just like it's a funny, cute game, and there's a very colorful cast of characters. Literally, the art style is very colorful, and I like the music. I think it might be like royalty-free music. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of, like, English lyrics, and I'm like, that's interesting. Okay. But it's quite good. Yeah, so I'm gonna mention a couple more games by Miyashiba really quick. There's a sequel, it's called One Beat Heart, and it's like more of a mystery Ace Attorney style game. And Miyashiba has also made this trio of games called LiEat, which is about like
Objection.
this little...
Objection.
Yeah, Objection. That's basically One Beat Heart, which is the sequel. But LiEat is this trilogy of games about this little, like, dragon girl who eats lies. It's quite cute. And then Faceless only has a demo, but it's about, like... I don't quite remember exactly, but I really liked the music. It's about being, like, a little... I don't remember if it was, like, a wolf boy or something, and you... like, you are missing your face or something like that. Like, you're missing your body or your face or something, and you're like, where did it go? Ooh. I don't remember. It's been a while since I played Faceless Double.
Where did it go?
The art is nice. I don't remember the plot that well, sorry.
It's okay.
But, so I'm gonna mention 2 more games, and then I'm gonna fire even faster off my honorable mentions.
Yes.
So, we're gonna mention these last 2 games. These games kind of fall into the otome category. You know, they're visual novels or dating simulators, I think is what most people would probably call them, but otome means, like, girl, basically. So otome games tend to be, like, them dating simulators. You are dating people, it's cute, etc. But so Bountiful Boyfriend is... it's a dating simulator, it's an otome game, but, the twist is the boys are pigeons. Or, they're birds. We're dating birds. It's so the game is very quirky.
Quite literally, the birds and the bees.
It's yeah. You know, except you are a human girl. The main character is a human high school girl. And she's going to a bird school. Everyone else is a bird. It's very interesting. So, part of the appeal of Bountiful Boyfriend is just what the heck is this? Why is this bird dating game?
It's absurdity.
It's really absurd, and that's why it works so well. Like, the writing is pretty good, actually. Music's pretty good. The art is just pictures of birds, and I love it. I like birds personally. I expect a lot of bird puns. I like birds. I used to draw birds a lot, so, like, I'm like, oh yeah, cool, pictures of birds. And you will be surprised, they all have pretty good, like, personalities and diversity of, like, personality types and different characters. Like, there's a lot of dumb tropes, definitely, that it plays off of to work as a visual novel, but it's amazing. I love it. And, not the whole game. The whole game isn't entirely, like, hee-hee, quirky, fluffy stuff. Like, it goes there. It gets dark sometimes. So, like, 80% of Bountiful Boyfriend is, like, the hee-hee, you're playing the funny bird game with the cute boys. But also it's a funny bird game, and then the other 20% is like, this is happening. Ooh. It's just anxiety, like, manifested, and I love it. It's really good.
Anxiety.
I can't explain it because it's spoilery, but Bountiful Boyfriend isn't all sunshine and rainbows, let's just say.
Interesting.
So, there's more to it than just funny bird game. There's some lore. But, yeah, it also has a sequel, which is kind of more of a prequel, and it's like a Christmas special, and, it's also quite good. I like it. But, Bountiful Boyfriend has... different routes, so you can date different bird boys, and there's, like, a bad ending and a good ending for each of them, I think. And, yeah, it's quite
bad
great.
Ending, they just fly away into the sunset.
I mean, some of them are kind of like that. But, yeah, and then the last game I'm gonna mention is we're gonna mention it real quick, Gaku and Handsome, which is kind of another otome game, but it's a BL game, so if you're not familiar with BL, that means boys love, which means boy ex-boy.
Yeah,
2 boys kissing.
Yowie.
I can't believe it. Boy romance. But,
Yowie.
it's another dating simulator, but,
we stan.
Unfortunately, this game is not available in English. It's only available in Japanese, which is really sad. So that's why this is at the bottom of the list. If it had an English translation, I would recommend it so hard, but even I can't get through it. Like, I own the game, and I played it with a friend once, but... because my Japanese is quite poor. We used Google Translate mostly, and also guessing.
Use my solution.
We tried our best, but...
So get primary, secondary, and tertiary Japanese friends, and then just have them come over to your house.
Right, as Riley said.
Poison.
I just gotta learn Japanese, that's the thing. I gotta get more good at it, but we did our best, and we did, like, 1 route, I think, and the game has a couple routes, but... So, it's quite funny because it's very clearly a bad parody. Like, the art is bad, all the boys have really pointy chins. They recorded the lines badly on purpose. Like, I think some of them recorded their lines, like, out in very noisy spaces or, like, in their fridge or whatever. So it's really bad on purpose, I think. I really hope it's not an honest game. I'm pretty sure it's bad on purpose.
In their
like, they know it's
fridge,
bad.
you say?
The game is really awful and I love it, basically. But, you know, if this sounds interesting.
Charm.
If this
There's
sounds
charm
interesting.
to awful games.
Yeah, it is part of the awful games. But if this sounds interesting to you, and you don't speak Japanese, it has an anime adaptation. It's really short. Each episode is like 2 or 3 minutes long, and it's on Crunchyroll. So if you're interested in the game, but you don't speak Japanese, / you don't have money, because it's it's a cheap game, but, understandable. Sometimes you don't have money. You can watch it on Crunchyroll, and it'll take you like half an hour. Please watch the anime, it's so funny.
Disclaimer, this podcast is not supported by or sponsored anyways,
I wish.
by Crunchyroll.
Crunchyroll, I will talk about Gaku and Handsome for an hour if you sponsor us, just saying. But, yeah, Gaku and Handsome is a bad game, and I love it. And at least try the anime, it's quite short.
Okay.
But we're really getting up on our time, so I'm gonna rapid fire.
Honorable mentions.
So
hit me with them.
Yeah, so these are the honorable mentions. I will say that other than one game, these are games I haven't played, but I've seen Let's Plays of, or I have some knowledge of, but I don't know enough about them to talk about them here.
Disclaimer.
So, yeah, that's our disclaimer for these. The first one is Purgatory. I have actually played this one, but it just didn't make it to the list. It was quite close, though. So, sorry, Purgatory fans. And then everything else I haven't played, but I've seen Let's Plays, or I know a little bit about them. Corpse Party is quite interesting. It's another horror game. The Witch's House, Paranoiac / the Crooked Man series is quite good. Then there's Angels of Death, which is on Steam and Switch. It has an anime version. And then Yume Nikki is quite popular, but I've never played it.
Not to be confused by Mirai Nikki.
Yeah, it sounds like Mirai Nikki, but it's totally different. But yeah, Yume Nikki is quite popular, and it's more like psychological and interpretive. A lot of people like it, so those are my honorable mentions. Consider Googling these also if you like any of the horror games. Most of these are all horror games, actually. These are all horror games. So if you liked any of the horror games and you're looking for more, look these up. So yeah, that is my spiel, basically.
Awesome. Well, this has definitely been a very interesting interesting episode.
Yeah.
One more thing to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Do you, predictions for the future, do you think that, they will ever, the indie games will ever break into mass media? And if so, do you predict that, they will, by doing so, may seize their, their allure or their charm about
So, I assume by mass media, you mean more in the, pop culture big video game, because, right, a lot of these games get popular because of, YouTube Let's Plays, but that's not quite pop culture big. I think Higurashi.
Small
Higurashi's pretty well known, honestly, but most people know it as, the anime with the green-haired yandere. That's what most people know it as. And they're not aware that it's a visual novel, or that the anime has another season.
I'm raising my hand because I have been, ashamed to say that I'm one of those people.
It's okay. Most people, that's how I knew it too. I only vaguely knew it. I'm like, isn't that one green-haired yandere girl who does murder and hee hoo hoo yada yada? But I think Higurashi is quite popular, and I hope, now, it was only quite recently that the last big chapter of Higurashi was released in English officially, so there's actually still a little bit of the story left that hasn't been translated. So, I hope that gets translated soon, but otherwise, I think Higurashi is the most popular out of these.
Well, I know, speaking, for myself, obviously, that I will most definitely probably play Higurashi sometime
Try it
soon.
out. First chapter's free.
Yeah.
I just hope I get some people to download Higurashi.
Decently.
Try it out, people.
Yeah. I can read and speak decently, so, I don't think I will have that much of a issue.
Amazing.
So that's good. I am one of the few.
Yes.
Anyways, that just about wraps it up.
That's right.
Thank you again for this delicious
episode.
episode. Giving me a lot a lot to think about. And yeah, until next time, folks.
Yeah, see
we
you
will
then.
see you later.
Bye.
All right. Goodbye.